Hi, this is Dr. Toby, host of Health and Wellness with Dr. Toby, inviting you to watch our show for this month. It's going to be a great show with Dr. Kimberly and Chad Bibb. Kimberly is a family physician at the University of Mississippi. Chad is a physical therapist in the Jackson area. They both went to school at the University of Mississippi. Kim is an assistant professor, and Chad has his doctorate in physical therapy. And we want to hear their faith journey, their life journey. They've been married 16 years. They have two beautiful daughters, and they are ministers in their church. They help do marriage seminars and health awareness seminars. You don't want to miss it. Kimberly Bibb works with me at the University of Mississippi Medical Center, and she's been an inspiration of a Christian woman, and she's going to share with you what she's learned over the years in courtship, in marriage, in raising two daughters. Chad is a young man, 43 years old, who's going to share his heart on how we can raise a new generation of African American people who can go into the academic world, the spiritual world, and inspire people to change. This is a great show. They're going to share their faith, their focus, their family, their ups and downs, their turmoils. You will be blessed. I'm looking forward to seeing you on the show. Don't forget, Jesus is Lord. God bless you. Hi, this is Dr. Toby, your host on Health and Wellness with Dr. Toby. 3 John verse 2 says, I wish above all things that you be in health and prosper, even as your soul prospers. The will of God for you is that you be in health, not to be sick and be healed, but to be in health. And we have two people today who are going to help you and I be in health. Our guests today are some distinguished personalities. I work with Dr. Kimberly Bibb at the University of Mississippi and her husband, Mr. Chad Bibb. He's also a physical therapist, and they're going to be sharing nuggets from their faith journey, from their life journey, and how they can be beneficial to you from a health perspective. So all the way from Jackson, Clinton, precisely, Mississippi, it's a big welcome to Mr. and Dr. Mrs. Bibb. A real honor to be with you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Bibb and I worked together, and I met Chad when we preached at his church, Sweet Rest, Church of Christ Holiness, and it was a very warm atmosphere, and they're such an awesome couple. I think she told me they've been married 16 years,
Yes, 16.
and they have two lovely daughters, and they've been such a pivotal source of inspiration for my wife and I since we moved to Jackson, and we thought that they could share some things that will benefit you who are going through things that they may have gone through. You can learn from them, and also from their medical wealth of knowledge. So let's start by talking about who they are. So let's start with Chad. So Chad, the story I heard when I came to Sweet Rest was your family was the one who sold the property to the church.
Yes,
Your
yes.
grandparents, right?
Yes.
Wow.
The history of the church that you came to speak goes way, way, way back. And the church that we originally were on, and they're always talking about it, was a brush harbor. But my grandparents sold the land for that church. That's located in Rankin County, in a place called Pearl, Mississippi, where I was born and raised, right outside of Jackson. And so, yeah, that's where I was born and raised, and that's where, I guess we talk about faith journey began, at that little church right there where my grandparents sold the land.
I mean, we're talking of in the early 20th century, like 1915, 1920.
Yeah. We just had our 125th anniversary. So, yeah, it was, I guess it would be 18, late 18 something. But, yeah, it's been there quite a while. It was started by a guy named Bishop C.P. Jones.
C.P. Jones, right.
Started that congregation and the entire denomination, Church of Christ Holiness USA. So, yeah, it has a rich history that goes way, way, way back.
So tell me what it was growing up. I mean, you had grandparents who were very into the church. You had parents who obviously grew up. So what was it for you? How many brothers, sisters? Was it a normal thing to read the Bible? Was it the normal thing to pray? Was it a normal thing to go to church?
Oh, yeah. Well, growing up for me was definitely Bible based, as I would say. Grew up at church, Sunday school every Sunday, church every Sunday, Sunday night, Wednesday. It's one of those things where we were always at church. My mom and dad have always served in the church in several different capacities. Growing up and watching them, my older sister, my brothers. There's 4 of us. I have 2 sisters and a brother. There's 4 of us all together. We grew up at that church. That church is, I would say, it's a family-based church. So there's 3 or 4 families that kind of amass the most of the congregation. And so growing up with cousins, and we just grew up in the church.
Wow.
It's one of those things that you did. You know, it wasn't a question about whether we were going to church on Sunday. It's that we were going to church on Sunday. My grandmother went to that church as well, and we visited my mom, the church she grew up in was Baptist, but we visited them often as well. So I would definitely say we grew up in the church.
Was there any pressure on you as somebody whose parents and grandparents were pillars in the church, like you had to be this role model child in that congregation?
I wouldn't say pressure, because most of the kids I grew up with were all kind of in the same situation.
Okay.
We all had parents that grew up in the church, and we all kind of congregated together. Now, where things might change a little bit, where we were at school, where I got these group of cousins and friends that we've always been in Bible study together since we were babies, and then when we got to school, there was a sense of, at times, oh, they think they're better than you. You think, y'all think y'all better than us. Y'all think y'all better than us. That's one of the things I can remember being younger. As we got older, they kind of washed away, but I wouldn't say I felt pressure, because I had so many, because it was a family church. I had so many cousins and friends, and when I say cousins, some of them weren't my cousins, but because I've known them since I was a baby, they were my cousins. We all grew up under the same umbrella.
Just how did it turn out for you and your brothers? I mean, you were brought up under a faith umbrella. You went to college. You got an advanced degree as a physical therapist. How did your brothers and sisters turn out?
Well, we're all about in the same position. All have graduated. All have college degrees. My older sister is an attorney. Graduated from Mississippi College Law School. She's very
she's
active.
a judge, actually.
She's a judge.
Right.
Oh, yeah, you know more than me.
She's a judge, right?
She's very active in her church and our entire denomination. She is a dynamic speaker who's invited to speak all over. Then there's me, graduated from Tougaloo College. My little sister graduated from Mississippi State. She's a speaker. She's won awards in our church as far as speaking. My brother has a graduate degree from Jackson State in accounting. Probably not as talkative as the rest of us, but he still goes to the same church that we grew up in. Me and him and my little sister were all there. So we all have professional degrees. We all still are in the church and in that church family as well.
Because you don't realize, maybe you don't know this, but the number of medical doctors who are African American in 1970, African American, is lower than it is. It's higher in 1979 than it is in 2019.
Oh, I know that.
So we have fewer African American male physicians 40 years later compared to 40 years ago. And we're asking questions. The Orientals have increased, the Caucasians have increased. And if you look at the statistics, 70% of kids who enter high school don't graduate. And then about 60% of those who start college don't graduate.
Right.
It's higher in historically black colleges. So the question is, your family, it's amazing. You have 100% graduate, percentage. So your parents must have pushed education, or the church must have pushed it. Somebody must have enforced that.
The church definitely pushed it as well, but the bedrock would be my parents. And they didn't play. As far as education, I mentioned church, and church came first, but education was there as well. There was no slacking. We knew what you could do, what was expected of you, and that's what you did. It was tough at times. I find myself telling my daughters the same thing at this time. She'll say, well, everybody's doing it. Well, just because everybody's doing it, we're not everybody. That's kind of how I was raised. It was, I couldn't wind my way into, well, everybody going here, it didn't matter. They weren't falling for that. So I would definitely say the church had a lot to do with it spiritually, but my parents, education was the key, and you were not going to stop.
And they were not Were they college graduates?
Well, they both probably had associate's degrees.
Okay,
My dad was a OR room tech at
wow.
the VA, like on the job training.
Right.
My mom started off as an LPN and worked her way up to an RN,
Wow.
and then advanced her education even more to be like an ultrasound specialist. So I wouldn't,
So they advanced themselves.
they advanced themselves. When I got to Tougaloo, me and Kim both went to Tougaloo College. When I got to Tougaloo, it was my father's this, my mother's in this sorority and fraternity. No, they didn't take that route, but they were well accomplished in the fields that they were in, and they pushed us to do better. Kind of like you want, like I want my daughter to do better, and just keep doing better than pushing it forward.
So, Dr. Bibb, what do you think of the statistics that tell us that African American males and females are not pursuing education as much as the Caucasians and not the Hispanics, but the Caucasians and the Orientals, the Asians? There's something about, for example, the statistics say if you have an African in America, like I am an African immigrant, the average African has 2-3 degrees. They come to America with this mentality, I've got to succeed. But we are amazed when we come to America and we see young African Americans telling us, I don't need to go to college. I just want to play ball. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's just this. So I'm just curious what your perspective on the African American child going into college. We're not seeing the increase like we see in the other Caucasian and the Orientals. What can we do about it in that regard? What do you think?
Yeah, well, I definitely think that it's probably not as much of a push, and pushing them into going into those more advanced areas, such as going into medical school or professional schools, and more so just kind of settling for just the basics and not just pushing yourself beyond. As Chad mentioned, I grew up in a family where I was really pushed to pursue my goals and my dreams that I had, and so I think a lot of times now we don't see as much of that support and encouragement to try to get the students into some of those more advanced fields that we've had before. So and we definitely.
Do you know that Mississippi has the #1 teenage pregnancy rate in the country? The statistics are alarming, and I'm not going to go into the statistics, but I think a lot of the young girls don't go into further careers, and I'm not saying they cannot, but when they have a baby in high school, it takes a toll on their capability to pursue further education. So I don't know if that's different from when you were a young girl. I don't know if it's more now than it was then. I don't know if that's one of the factors. I don't know if drugs and other things play a part, but I think we need to address that among our teenagers.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
You wanted to say something, Chad?
Well, something I think we've talked about before, and Kim was mentioning, I'll let her talk about it, is when we have this culture and this our friends and this little box that we know, and even things such as teenage pregnancy, they don't let it affect them. You know what I mean? We have friends who've had babies where their parents go all in
to keep them in school.
to keep them on the right track. And I think the situation where everybody doesn't have
so the family support is extremely important.
That's what I was going.
And the church support,
right,
very important.
For them to realize that it's somebody might be watching, to realize that doesn't have to be the case. It doesn't mean to be like, I messed up, I made a mistake, it's kind of a setback. Man, I wanted to go to medical school. I probably won't be able to go now. Well, you have to kind of change your whole mind frame, but you can't do it by yourself because you do have a baby and you do have extra responsibility. So I think that has a lot to do with it as well. And we've talked about that before, how we've seen people who strive and do good, but they can't do it by themselves.
Right. So, Kim, tell us your story. You're a physician, family physician. You went to one of the best schools in Mississippi, University of Mississippi, pursued your dreams. You went further to the program in Alabama in
Huntsville,
Huntsville. I keep saying
yes.
Huntsville, yeah.
Right.
And you came back and opened a practice. Now you're back in the university as a faculty. So that's pretty much, I think, a young girl's dream. To educate and inspire the next generation of medical students. I know we don't know this, but there are more female medical students now than
Yes.
males.
Right, right.
So we're actually raising more female doctors today than we are. Unfortunately, we're still not. There's still a good number of female African American young medical students, but we still need a whole lot more than we have. So just tell us your work through. How were you raised, and how did you get to where you are today?
Right, right. Okay, sure. Well, I grew up in Jackson, Mississippi,
Okay.
with my parents and my younger sister, who's 7 years younger than I am. And we grew up in what would be considered, I guess, the bad side of town now, in West Jackson. And I attended Wingfield High School there. And I actually graduated valedictorian of my class. And I pretty much had a consistent path throughout my schooling and professional career, but after graduating from high school, I went to Tougaloo College where Chad and I met, and then after that, or actually while I was there, I spent a semester at Brown University in Rhode Island,
Okay.
and then because that was one option of going to medical school as an early identification program participant there. However, I did decide to go to medical school at the University of Mississippi Medical Center. And so I did that for 4 years. And while I was in medical school, I decided that initially I thought I wanted to go into pediatrics. And so after doing my family medicine rotation is when I got more interested in doing both pediatrics and adults, and so decided to pursue family medicine as a career. And so after medical school, I attended the University of Alabama Family Medicine Residency Program, where I spent 3 years. And then after we had our first child there, we decided to move back home and reside now in Clinton. And so since I moved back, I've been in different different areas as far as different types of practices. So initially I was working for a community health center in Jackson, and then I went into a private physician's office, then a hospital-based clinic, and then eventually opened my own practice for 2 years prior to going to the University of Mississippi Medical Center, excuse me, which is where I am now. And so
Let's talk about your growing up.
Uh-huh.
So you grew up in I don't know if it's South Jackson.
West Jackson.
Okay.
Yes.
I really don't know the difference. Everybody uses I don't know how do you know where you are?
Right. So I
But-
grew up in West Jackson, but attended school in
South
South
Jackson, so that's what makes it confusing,
Right.
Okay, so you had a sister, but your dad was an accountant,
My dad was the risk manager for the city of Jackson.
but he had a degree. So
Yes,
you came
so
out,
he-
your parents both had degrees.
Right. They both
Okay.
attended Jackson State, which is where they met, and got their bachelor's and then even their master's.
So education was expected for you and your sister.
Right,
There was
right.
no, I'm not going to college kind of story.
Right,
Okay.
right. Yeah,
okay.
that was pretty much the expectation.
Okay.
My mom was a supervisor at the post office
Nice,
in Jackson.
nice.
And even my grandmother completed college.
At Jackson State. Awesome.
Jackson State.
So faith-wise, you guys obviously were not Church of Christ. You were Baptist or something
my
close to
mom
that.
was Baptist and my dad was United Methodist, or is
Okay.
United Methodist. And so we kind of grew up with both of those within our family. We attended both Baptist and United Methodist churches.
really?
I actually accepted Christ in the United Methodist Church because we would attend that church at least once a month with my grandmother and would sing in the choir there, say speeches, and
Okay.
had a lot of upbringing.
Which one? Which United Methodist Church?
It's Green Grove United Methodist Church, which is actually where my parents actually go to church now.
Okay.
And they're very active there.
In Jackson?
This is in Forest,
In
or
Forest, okay.
Lake Mississippi,
Interesting.
but it's actually my dad's home church.
Okay.
And so this is where, but we would go there almost once a month because they would have service once a month.
Wow.
And so just being with my grandmother being a really big influence in my life as well, we would attend church with her. And then when we were in Jackson, we would attend another church, usually a Baptist church in Jackson.
And the church was, the students you grew up with were all going to college. They were all focused on education. I mean, was it normal in the United Methodist, or
Well, some,
Okay.
most of them.
They encouraged
and I guess
college
yes,
and
they
education.
did.
Okay.
Yes, they did.
Was it a
yeah.
problem when you two got married to go to the Church of Christ Holiness? Some couples are listening and they're like, "Oh, my husband wants us to go to his church, not my church." How did you guys come across
Well,
middle ground?
a small, I guess you could almost call it a blessing. When we got married, we immediately went off for her residency.
Right?
And so we had a clean slate.
Okay.
So we moved. We
In
moved
Huntsville,
in
right?
Huntsville, yeah. So in Huntsville, we basically, instead of your church or my church, we were able to find our church.
Okay.
And it was a great church. Pastored by Dr. Julia Scruggs. It's called First Missionary Baptist in Huntsville. So I would say the first part of our marriage that was not an issue because we got to start from scratch. And then when we moved back home, we joined my church. Now, I don't know how she felt, but yeah, we ended up joining my church. But we, as a young, newly married couple, we grew at a church we kind of picked out together, which is in itself is, if I'm talking to young couples, it's probably not a bad idea. If you're going back and forth about where you might want to go, it was really, I want to say refreshing might be the best word I could come up with, to be able to pick a church together instead of go back and forth like that. And moving off to Huntsville allowed us the opportunity to pick a church that we both like. So if you are struggling with that, just pick a church you both like.
Yeah, and I will say that I really felt comfortable at the church where we are now, because really when we were dating in college for 6 years, which is we dated for 6 years prior to, I would have the opportunity to visit and go to his church sometimes. And so I knew a lot of the people there even then, and so I really felt comfortable there. Some of the practices are similar to what I was used to. And then even when we did move back, Chad didn't really force that up on me. We did visit other churches within the area before we made that decision, and so it wasn't until we both felt comfortable with that not until that.
I'm going to pick something you said, 6 years dating. Now, people tell us don't date for more than a year or two. Have you heard that? I don't know if you heard that.
I think that's the going right nowadays.
So you guys dated for 6 years. That is an amazing time. So
when I tell people that, I think part of it, we met early in college.
Right.
So she was coming in her sophomore, like the end of her freshman year. So when we met, she was 19, I was 20. So we met when we were so young, it pushed that number up. Now, the second part about that is, by us both going to professional school, it delayed it a little bit more. I jokingly tell her that we needed to wait because her dad was helping her, and I didn't want to get married, and he'd be like, "Well, now now you take over." That's just a joke. But between Tougaloo and both going to UMC and professional school, that's why I was pushed over. And trust me, of course, it was to a benefit waiting that long.
Now you have 2 daughters. What would you advise your daughter if she comes to you and says, "Hey, Dad, I met somebody." I mean, this is 12th grade, right?
Right.
I want to talk to you about this guy. I mean, what would you?
I tell her to wait
because
for
the
16 years.
There are young girls listening, and it's so common today to date in high school, and to get in a relationship. And you have 2 girls, so you're gonna deal with.
Oh,
this.
Lord have mercy.
So what's your plan? I know they're not old enough for that, but what's your plan for that?
Yeah, so I would definitely tell any young girl to definitely be to stay focused on your schooling, and try to stay focused on what your goals are, and to not let any boys or guys distract you from doing what you want to do in life. And that was something that I really had to stay true to for myself too, going through. It's so easy to get distracted from not only dating, but other things too. But to just know that that can wait, and so like I said, just staying true to yourself and getting a good education, and knowing and keeping God first in your life.
So don't just do it because every girl in the class is doing it.
Right. Yeah.
Wow, What are the challenges? I mean, okay, I have a boy and a girl, so I need to learn from you because you guys you've raised 2 daughters and they're teenagers, right?
Or the oldest
Oh, well,
is,
yeah, the
Okay.
oldest is a teenager.
What are the
13.
challenges? I mean, just talking to you as a parent, what can you tell us about raising teenagers? What are the nuggets? What are the secret pearls? What are
Well, we're just getting started, but she'll be oldest will be 14 in about a month, and it's definitely different. I grew up with 2 sisters, and I had a really interesting coworker I worked with for about 10 or 15 years, and his daughters are probably college and older now, and so the same question you're asking, he would always drop these little bits of information. He was like, when mama and daughters are arguing, you try to stay out of it. He was always telling me, well, this is gonna happen, and I promise you, about 99.9% of everything he said
came to pass.
has come to pass, and I'm still waiting on some of it, and I know just based on what he said before, it's gonna come to pass. So, based on what he's told me, staying in their lives, even when they, oh man, we don't want to, I'm talking to my daughter a couple of the tough talks we've had, and she's probably going to see this. She'll probably remember, he told me, you wait till you're in the car. Wait till you're in the car, cut the radio off, and they can't go anywhere. And I was like, man, that's perfect. You know what I mean? Because, instead of them grabbing their ears and walking off. So little things like that, talking to them while they're in the car. But as a dad, especially, it's just continuously communicating, letting them know you're there for them. You kind of talk and jokingly. One of the blessings we have are my sisters and Kim's sister as well. She knows that if there's something that she really, really just can't say to me, she'll go to my older sister.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
The judge.
The judge. Yeah. Everybody goes to the judge. But so we've been blessed in that fashion that we have other family members. We want her to know that she can come and talk, any questions she might have, any sadness she might have. But we all know at times there might be things you might want to share. And I would definitely say we're blessed in that with grandparents that are involved and older aunts and uncles that would always be there for them. So
you guys don't realize this, but you are the exception. Do you know that 80% of African American children are being raised in single parent homes in some parts of America? It could be 50, 60, 70. So we're going to come back next time and we're going to continue on this faith journey, okay? And Dr. Bibb and her husband are going to share with us some other nuggets in terms of our health. Don't miss it. Look forward to seeing you. God bless you. Jesus is Lord. Amen.